Tina Turner, The Survivor's Epic. The Roots of Nutbush, Between Cotton and Abandonment. The silence of the Tennessee countryside in 1939 gave no hint that a legend was about to be born. Anna Mae Bullock came into the world in a deeply divided America, marked by segregation and the harshness of farm labor. Her early years were set to the rhythm of the scorching sun in the cotton fields. She was only a child when she learned that life was a struggle. The Bullock family dynamic was toxic. Her parents, Zelma and Floyd, lived in constant tension. When war broke out, the hope of a better life pushed them toward defense plans, but this hope did not extend to their children. Abandonment was Anna Mae's first great scar. Left with grandparents whose religious piety bordered on absolute severity, she grew up with the idea that she was unwanted. This original wound would later become the engine of her thirst for recognition on stage. 2. St. Louis and the Meeting of Destiny. Anna Mae's adolescence was marked by chaos. After the death of her grandmother, she joined her mother in St. Louis. It was there that the chrysalis began its transformation. In the smoky clubs of the city, she discovered blues and rock and roll. But most importantly, she discovered Ike Turner. Ike was a visionary musician but a broken and domineering man. When he heard Anna Mae's voice for the first time in 1957, he didn't just see talent, he saw an opportunity. He renamed her Tina Turner without asking her opinion, trademarking the name as a commercial brand. It was the beginning of a Faustian bargain. Under the spotlights, they were the most electrifying duo in America. Behind the scenes, Ike's violence turned Tina's life into a daily living hell. 3. The Spotlight's Hell, a prison of silk and blood. The success of A Fool in Love in 1960 propelled the duo to the top of the R&B charts, but for Tina, every gold record was paid for with her own blood. Ike Turner was not just her mentor, he had become her jailer. Throughout the 1960s, the Ike and Tina Turner Revue toured the United States at a frantic pace. Tina, with her iconic wigs and explosive choreography, masked a sordid reality. She often took the stage with cracked ribs, split lips, or eyes hidden under layers of theatrical foundation. Ike's violence was unpredictable. A wrong word, a hint of fatigue, and he would use whatever was at hand, shoe stretchers, hangers, or his own fists. Tina lived in a permanent state of post-traumatic stress. In 1968, cornered, she attempted to end her life by swallowing 50 Valium pills just before a show. She woke up in the hospital, and the first thing she saw was Ike's face, not worried, but furious that she had almost sabotaged the tour. It was at that precise moment, in the fog of drugs and pain, that a spark of survival was lit. She realized that if she didn't leave, she would die. For The Dallas Escape, 32 Cents Toward Freedom. July 4, 1976, has remained in history as Tina Turner's Independence Day. While on tour in Dallas, a violent argument broke out in the limousine. For the first time, Tina fought back. Arriving at the Statler Hilton Hotel, she waited for Ike to fall asleep. She took nothing but her jewelry and a gas station credit card. She ran across the freeway, dodging trucks in the dark, her face bloodied. She found refuge in a Ramada Inn motel, begging the manager for a room even though she only had 32 cents in her pocket. It was the purest act of bravery of her life. She spent the following months hiding with friends, fearing that Ike's henchmen would find her. During the 1978 divorce, she made a radical choice. She gave up everything, money, properties, song rights, on one condition, to keep her name. She knew that this name, though forged in pain, was her only currency for the future. The Wilderness Years and Spiritual Awakening. After the divorce, Tina Turner was little more than a shadow to the American music industry. She was nearly 40 years old, a black woman in a field dominated by white men, and she was perceived as a nostalgia act whose glory days were behind her. To support her 4 sons, she had to accept humbling contracts in second-rate hotels and nearly empty ballrooms. She lived on food stamps, sometimes cleaning houses to make ends meet. It was in this darkness that she found her light, Soka Gakkai Buddhism. Introduced to the practice of chanting Amel Horenj Kyo, Tina began to meditate for hours every day. This was not just a religion for her, it was psychological armor. She often stated that Buddhism gave her the strength to forgive, not for Ike's sake, but for her own liberation. This inner peace radically transformed her stage presence. She was no longer a victim singing to survive, but a lioness reclaiming her territory. 6. 1984, the private dancer explosion. The decisive turning point happened in Europe. While American labels were slamming doors in her face, the European public, more open and less obsessed with age, welcomed her with open arms. Roger Davies, a young Australian manager, saw in her what no one else did, a rock icon. The recording of the album Private Dancer in England was a miracle of speed. In just 2 weeks, she recorded tracks that would define the 1980s. When What's Love Got to Do With It was released in 1984, it sent shockwaves around the world. At 45, Tina Turner became the oldest woman to hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. Her wild hair, denim jacket, and sculptural legs became symbols of an unprecedented rebirth. She wasn't just coming back, she was erasing 20 years of trauma with a single chorus. The rise of the Ikettes and Southern segregation. In the early 1960s, Ike Turner realized that Tina's voice wasn't enough. He needed a visual spectacle. He created the Ikettes, a trio of backing singer-dancers whose choreography was so physical and frenetic it seemed to defy the laws of gravity. Tina was their general. She didn't just sing, she directed every movement, every dance step, all while managing life as a mother of 4 boys, Craig, Ronnie, and Ike's 2 sons, Ike Jr. and Michael. The Ike and Tina Turner Revue became a war machine. They traveled in dilapidated buses, crossing the Chitlin Circuit, a network of performance venues safe for black artists in an America still under the yoke of Jim Crow laws. Tina would later recount the humiliation of not being allowed to eat in certain restaurants or sleep in certain hotels, even though they were the stars of the evening. This road-hardened life built her endurance, but beneath the surface, Ike's cocaine use was beginning to transform his authoritarian character into a murderous paranoia. Meeting Phil Spector and River Deep, Mountain High. In 1966, an event changed the artistic perception of Tina. Legendary producer Phil Spector, fascinated by her voice, offered to record a track with her. However, Spector didn't want Ike involved. He paid Ike $20,000, a massive sum at the time, to stay away from the studio. Tina discovered for the first time what it was like to work with a perfectionist who didn't use violence. Spector made her sing River Deep, Mountain High dozens of times for hours until she was drenched in sweat and her voice reached a quasi-spiritual dimension. Although the record was a relative failure in the US, being too white for R&B radio and too black for pop radio, it was a massive hit in England. This was when George Harrison and Mick Jagger began to view her as a peer, inviting her to open for the Rolling Stones. Awareness and the Wall of Silence. By the late 60s and early 70s, Tina was a global star, but she was a prisoner. Ike controlled the money, the contracts, and even her clothes. Every success, like their cover of Proud Mary, was followed by scenes of unheard-of violence backstage. Tina began wearing wigs not for style, but because Ike had pulled out clumps of her hair or burned her scalp. During this period of absolute despair, a band technician told her about Nichiren Buddhism. At first, she was skeptical. How could chanting a few words stop a man's blows? But she began practicing in secret, locking herself in the bathroom to recite Nam Myo Horenj Kyo. She later said this practice began to change her molecular structure. She no longer saw Ike as an all-powerful master, but as a weak, sick man. Divorce and the long night toward rebirth. After her escape in Dallas in 1976, the world forgot her. The divorce was a battle of attrition. To gain her freedom, she agreed to take on all the debts from canceled tours. She found herself millions of dollars in debt with no resources. To survive, she appeared on second-rate TV shows and did cabaret gigs for audiences who took her for a has-been. Yet, she refused to become Anna Mae again. She remained Tina Turner. Between 1977 and 1983, she lived through a true wilderness. She lived in small apartments, did her own cleaning, and cared for her sons while singing in Vegas clubs where people ate their steaks without even looking at her. It was this forced humility that forged the Tina the world would adore in 1984, a woman who had lost everything except her dignity. The British rebirth and the private dancer explosion. In 1983, while the American industry had buried her, Tina Turner traveled to London. This trip was the catalyst for one of the greatest comebacks in music history. Under the wing of her manager Roger Davies, she began collaborating with young British producers. The recording of the album Private Dancer took place in a creative rush, in just 2 weeks. When What's Love Got to Do with It was released in 1984, it redefined pop rock standards. Tina appeared not as an R&B singer of the past, but as a modern icon, sporting her denim jacket, wild hair, and stiletto heels. At 45, she became the oldest woman to reach the top of the Billboard Hot 100, proving to the world that talent has no expiration date. The album sold over 20 million copies, turning the survivor into a global superstar. The queen of stadiums and global hegemony. The years from 1985 to 2000 marked the era of Tina Turner's hegemony. She was no longer content with clubs, she filled stadiums. In 1988, during her Break Every Rule tour, she broke a world record at the Maracana Stadium in Rio de Janeiro, performing for 180,000 paying fans. Her voice, now more powerful and mature, echoed like a hymn to freedom. She also shone in cinema in Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, where she played the unforgettable anti-entity. The lead song, We Don't Need Another Hero, became a worldwide hit. In 1993, the autobiographical film What's Love Got to Do with It, based on her book I, Tina, told her ordeal with Ike to the general public. The whole world was petrified by the strength of this woman who, despite blows and humiliation, managed to become the queen of rock and roll. Erwin Bach in Peace in Switzerland. Tina Turner's true success was not financial, but personal. In 1986, she met Erwin Bach, a German music executive, at Düsseldorf Airport. It was the beginning of a 37-year relationship based on an equality and respect she had never known. For him, she left the United States and moved to Switzerland on the shores of Lake Zurich. In 2013, at the age of 73, she married Erwin and officially renounced her U.S. citizenship to become a Swiss citizen. She finally found what she had been looking for since Nutbush, a stable home and a peaceful life away from the paparazzi. However, her health began to decline. She survived a stroke, intestinal cancer, and in 2017, she was saved by Erwin, who donated one of his kidneys during a vital transplant. The farewell of a lioness and eternal legacy. The final years of her life were marked by Buddhist serenity but also by mourning. She had to face the tragic loss of her sons, Craig in 2018 and Ronnie in 2022. Despite these devastating trials, she remained a pillar of strength, finding comfort in her faith and in Erwin's love. Tina Turner passed away on May 24, 2023, at her home in Küsnacht, at the age of 83. She leaves behind a legacy that goes beyond music. She is the symbol of absolute resilience. From the little girl picking cotton in Tennessee to the global legend who won 12 Grammy Awards, she proved that pain can be transmuted into power. Her name will never again be associated with that of her abuser, but will stand alone, at the top, as that of a woman who broke every chain.